And as the former president gets ready to turn himself in, Fani Willis, as we mentioned earlier, is trying to get a court date set for October 23rd.
All right, joining us now, Jeremy Saland, a former assistant district attorney in Manhattan. Jeremy, thanks for being with us.
How are you?
All right, so another big eventful day. Here you are again joining us. What do we expect to see over the next hours when he turns himself in? There's been all the speculation. Are we going to get a mugshot, et cetera, et cetera? It seems like we will this time.
I think it's exciting, for lack of a better term, for people on the outside, but I think it's fairly routine and mundane for people on the inside. It's going to be fingerprints. They say a mugshot, as the sheriff said, for anybody is going to be treated like everybody else.
Yeah.
That will be, as you noted, the first presidential mugshot that anyone will ever see. But Rice, that city jail at Rice, or that county jail on Rice Street, they're going to move him through. He's not going to be staying there for any time long.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this trial date. Obviously, the DA, as Linda mentioned, wants to move it up to October 23rd. The Georgia governor said there's no way that this happens before the election. And I know the Trump team has tried to push for it to happen 3 years from now. What say you?
So
I wouldn't be concerned so much with what the Georgia governor has to say. It's whether or not DA Willis can actually get ready and be ready for a trial on October 23rd. And there's also competing trials. We have federal court trials. We have two that are in the works right now that are, in the midst of still discovery and things like that. Issues that are going to be raised, there's still a removal proceeding that Meadows, for example, and Clark have brought that is still being dealt with in federal court. And now we've just learned that Ken Cheeseborough, who's one of the defendants, asked for that October 23rd, asked for a speedy trial date, and the court specifically and only granted that speedy trial date for him, not the rest of the defendants.
Right. Do you think that was in conjunction? Was that a tactic on their part to sort of separate it out? How does that work when you have 18 co-defendants?
Well, I don't know if Cheeseborough really thought that the judge would grant that and separate him. There is going to be a lot of defendants who are going to want to be severed from this, because when you're a low person on the totem pole, you don't want to be sort of sucked into all this when you're facing 5 years or more on a RICO charge. But for Cheeseborough, what's interesting now is if the judge, in fact, pushes this one case forward by itself and Donald Trump wants to sever it, that could be really problematic for the DA, because you don't want to retry your case, putting on potentially, not in totality, some of the same witnesses, some of the same evidence. That becomes very problematic for her as well. So it's either all or nothing. But I still think that October 23rd date is even if there's a decision by a judge, is very, very aggressive.
I mean, that's less than 2 months from now,
that's
right?
That's very aggressive.
Yeah.
And what's the likelihood this goes to federal court?
I don't think, when you look at the supremacy clause, one of the things, or the most important thing you're looking at is, were you acting as, or were you serving as someone who was in an official capacity, such as the president? But it's not just whether you were, it's whether the acts you were doing and the roles you were playing were consistent with that job. So in other words, fighting the Georgia election results and dealing with the Electoral College, that has nothing to do with the chief of staff and your role professionally. That has nothing to do with being president of the United States. You have a lot of different roles, but not that. So I think it's going to be difficult for them to actually succeed in the end, but we'll certainly know, because I believe it's scheduled for Monday and there's witnesses testifying that have been subpoenaed.
Yeah, very well. All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Jeremy Saland, we appreciate it, as always. Thanks so much.
Thank you.